Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show. This is another predictions episode, which is, a bit cliche, but it is the beginning of week 1 of the NFL season. It's finally here, so I've got to really get this in, as uninspiring an episode choice as this feels. But it's going to be, as I say, all the major awards and statistical categories. Who's going to lead each one? So I'm going to hop right in here and go with what I think is one of the easier predictions, the Comeback Player of the Year award. This year, I can't see it going to anyone other than JJ Watt. All he's got to do is come back healthy and perform as he has done in the past, where he's been he's been the best defensive player I've probably seen. So, generational talent, absolute monster. I think with that, he'll be competing for Defensive MVP once again. I think he ends up taking home the Comeback Player of the Year award. I think similarly, Justin Houston could end up battling him for this. Possibly even Andrew Luck. I don't know if that would be considered a comeback, though, necessarily, coming from that injury. But Watt's an easy choice. He clearly qualifies for it, having played, barely a game last year. You never know. Other guys that could, Adrian Peterson, but I can't see it. He's already won it before, and I just don't think he's going to have that great of a season in New Orleans. So I think Watt's the safest bet, with Justin Houston number 2. In the stick to the defensive side of the ball with my second selection. That's for the sack leader, and I've got Joey Bosa of the LA Chargers. He was phenomenal as a rookie, and as considering he missed training camp and missed the beginning of the season, he was one of the most dominant players in the NFL last year. He played inside, outside, they moved him about. It didn't matter. He was wreaking absolute havoc, especially after just a few weeks. Teams were adjusting and making him the primary focus in terms of stopping. Melvin Ingram got freed up a little more, and he had a great season also as a result. But Bosa was still putting up huge numbers in terms of pressures. I think this year he's got the experience, a whole off season behind him. I think he'll have more familiarity with the NFL game. I think he'll have refined himself a little as a player, and I just think he's going to be pushing towards double-digit sacks this year. I certainly do not see that being impossible, especially because I can see the Chargers being a team that needs to rush the passer a lot this year. So I think he takes home the sack trophy. Similarly with tackles, this one's such a difficult one to predict. You do tend to get some similar names there or thereabouts every year, but I think this guy is going to have a chance because he's going to be on an offense that's going to be super explosive. He's going to put up a lot of points. Teams are going to try and run the ball a lot, and this guy's a tackling machine. So I've got Ryan Shazier finishing as the NFL tackle leader. He's a sideline defender. In the run game, their primary focus is going to be funneling guys towards him in terms of what the defensive line is doing or having him chase guys down. He's going to do that. As I say, team's going to run at this team a lot. Their defensive line doesn't look incredibly strong, and teams are going to want to shorten that clock because that offense is going to put up points. I think all of that adds up to Shazier having ample opportunities to pile up absurd tackle numbers. So he is my favourite to take home the tackle trophy. And we'll top all that off with the Defensive Player of the Year. And I've got that award going to Joey Bosa. If he leads the league in sacks, then he's going to get that title, because the Chargers I don't think are going to be great this year. I think it's going to be tough, but I think he'll get the award based on being the sack leader and the difficulty of schedule. He's going to have to play against some really good players in order to accumulate that number of sacks, and I think he's just going to have a really well-rounded game. I think he's I picked him as the sack leader, so I think kind of by default, considering the calibre of pass rushers in the league, you've always got to favour the defensive lineman. Very difficult for defensive backs to come away with this unless they get an absolutely ridiculous season in terms of interceptions. The hardest stat to predict, as well. I don't even bother predicting an interception leader. There is no point. It's rather redundant, I feel. So, yeah, Joey Bosa, bit of a surprise name, I'm sure, for some. JJ Watt has to be a favourite. guys like Justin Houston, Von Miller. There's so many players you can expect, and the reigning Defensive Player of the Year in Khalil Mack. You can expect these guys to all be competing it for this spot, but I think Bosa takes his game up another level next year, and if he takes it up another level, then he's getting this award. He really was that darn good. So we'll move on to the offensive side of the ball, some of the more flashy stuff. I'll get one of the easier ones out of the way. Receiving yards, it's going to be Odell Beckham Jr. Assuming he's healthy, my only concern is that you never know with him how much legitimacy is. Clearly, it was a big hit he suffered in pre-season. You never know how much that may linger on. He is the kind of player that may choose to make it a bigger story than it needs to be, because that's just kind of his thing. He seems to like being a focal point when it comes to the media. But this is a team that last year doesn't make the playoffs without him. As good as that defence is, they had to get their offence from somewhere. And whilst Sterling Shepard did a good job, this is the guy. I don't see that changing, even with the addition of Brandon Marshall and the rookie Ingram. I don't think that changes things significantly, in all honesty. And Beckham's going to be heavily targeted and relied upon. And frankly, if anything, these guys might help him in terms of getting the yardage that's required to get those numbers. In terms of my receptions leader, I've gone for, and this is a bit of a tough category as well, but I've gone for Jarvis Landry. Just piling up catches at an absurd rate. I think this team's going to, in year two, I think Cutler's basically just going to rely on him. You're going to see Devontae Parker doing a lot of the intermediate and deep stuff, Kenny Steele similarly, and I think as a result, you're going to see Jarvis Landry doing the underneath stuff almost exclusively with Julius Thomas, and as a result, he's just going to compile very large numbers of catches, as he's been wont to do over his career. So I really don't think anyone should be surprised at that prediction necessarily. In terms of for receiving touchdowns, I think that's going to be Mike Evans this year. I think the Buccaneers offense has improved a lot. They've got some issues in the red zone, or they've had some issues in the red zone over the last couple of years. However, I think this year they've got an absolute ton of size, and teams aren't going to be able to exclusively double him in the red zone anymore. You're going to have Cameron Brate, who's very effective in that range, OJ Howard. Having those two tight ends should also make the running game more of a threat. Deshaun Jackson's going to be there. He'll be able to run, drag routes, anything that goes over the middle of the field and just get away from a guy man to man. He'll be effective doing that. Evans and Des Bryant, for me, are the two best fade route players in the league right now. And as a result, I think Evans gets a lot of those. I think he gets some more deep catches this year as a result of the other guys that have been added to the offense, and a bit more refinement from Jameis Winston and his deep ball mechanics, and just not being quite as heavily covered. That I think he's been a touchdown machine since he came into the league, and I think this year he's got an opportunity to surpass those numbers even more so. And in terms of rushing yards, this is a tough one. I would have gone with Zeke, like I imagine most would have, but with the suspension, that's borderline impossible. So I have David Johnson finishing with that total. I think we're going to see Le'Veon Bell rush the ball a little bit less and more of an effort to keep him healthy. We've seen him break down towards the end of the season a couple of times over the course of his career, and they seem to have found their backup in Connor. I think he'll get more carries than people are expecting. David Johnson has no one to split carries with when I look at this roster at the moment. Based on his production last year, which was absolutely phenomenal, I think that's going to remain the case. The closest threat I could really think would be perhaps Jordan Howard, but I think with a year of film on him, being such a dangerous player, and the limitations in that that offense and just the team around him. This is a team that's going to need to pass to catch up in a lot of games. So I can't see Howard taking it. LaShawn McCoy, again, similar story with the Bills. Had they not sort of tanked their season with trades, I think he'd have been a legitimate threat for this. So Johnson's the clear favourite. You never know, Todd Gurley might be able to get back on track, but I still just can't see the Rams being that good. And a lot of these top teams have committees. So Johnson has as good a chance as any. He's my favourite to finish the 2017 season as the rushing leader at this point in time. Similar with sort of actually the rookies like Dalvin Cook, Fournette, I think they'll get a lot of carries. I just don't think they've got the offensive lines or the offenses around them. And Joe Mixon, I just think, does not see enough carries to threaten for this title. It's pretty good backfield depth there in Cincy. And then we'll go with the easiest of these, the passing title. I've got that going to Drew Brees because it's Drew Brees, and he's going to throw for 5,000 yards until his arm shows me otherwise. I know they've brought in all these new running backs. I know there's some guys that are, Derek Carr, James Winston, Marcus Mariota, some of these young quarterbacks. You can possibly see a big jump in their passing numbers, but Drew Brees is, the king of throwing the ball until Sean Payton's gone or his arm falls off. So that's the easiest one. Just make that a yearly one as long as the status quo remains the same. In terms of my offensive player of the year, I think that's going to go to David Johnson. I think he's going to perform similarly to how he did last year, if not even better. And I think this offense around him will be a little better this year, and that will lead to his numbers staying steady. I'm not sure if they're going to improve massively, but I think that results in, I think he'll have less catches this year, but I think he'll have better rush numbers. And I think that'll be good enough for him to take home the trophy. They say him and Bell really have to be the two favourites. And I think Beckham also is a threat for this. So I just think he's going to put up some absolutely insane numbers this year as the primary weapon in that Giants offense. But yeah, David Johnson, the arguably the most complete back in the league. It's between him and Bell. They're both fantastic. And I just think the amount more opportunities that Johnson will get will allow him to take this trophy home. In terms of the MVP, I've got Ben Roethlisberger. I would not be shocked at all, especially with the recent additions, if the Steelers manage to take home the number one seed in the AFC, which will be difficult because, of course, you got the Patriots, and they've had home field so often, it's not even funny, frankly. It's just a little bit sad. But I think this Steelers team's got as good a chance as any. I think the league seems to have a preference for giving the MVP to guys that are seen as elevating their team. And Roethlisberger I think he'll have enough weapons this year to distribute the ball around, with Vance McDonald, Martavis Bryant coming back, some of the young guys coming in. I think Smith-Schuster makes a lot of sense for this team. I think second half of the season, will start to contribute. I think you'll see Bell, of course, in the receiving game, so on Antonio Brown. But I think because there'll be such a distribution amongst those guys, this offense will be incredibly productive. And at the end of the day, it will all reflect very well on Roethlisberger. And if they can take that one seed, I think that basically makes him the absolute favourite. I've had this discussion with people and they're saying, why not Brady? I think Brady, to some degree, is hurt by having Bill Belichick as his coach. His teams generally, for the most part with Brady, have been defensive teams, and Brady being a very efficient, smart quarterback who doesn't make mistakes, but statistically he's not been, on par with. This is the reason Peyton Manning has so many MVP awards, is because that team was relying on Peyton Manning's arm. As we saw the year he went down. Tom Brady, we saw him go down, and Matt Castle led what was still a very good Patriots team to a 10-6 record. We saw last year Tom Brady suspended for a few games. The team was still good. It's not a knock on Tom Brady. It's just the team around him is so well coached and well constructed. I think when you're talking about most valuable, he is seen as, in a way, less valuable, if you can see what I mean. whilst I think that argument doesn't necessarily reflect well on my selection of Roethlisberger here, because I think you could make a lot of the same arguments. Tomlin's a very good head coach. The personnel in Pittsburgh are absolutely fantastic on the offensive side of the ball. I just think his numbers have the potential to be absolutely ridiculous. This is a team that could probably go 14-2, and I wouldn't even be remotely surprising, frankly. And if that's the case, I think Roethlisberger walks home with the MVP award. Now, in this scenario, I think you'd see Mike Tomlin go home as my coach of the year. But I'm going to hedge my bets a little bit, and I'm giving it to Doug Pederson, or Pederson. It's got to be Pederson. I've heard it said both ways. Pederson. Doug Pederson of the Eagles. I've got them taking the NFC East title this year. I think it will be seen as a great, because of the amount of new players, it will be seen as a great coaching job. It will be a great coaching job. It's a second-year quarterback. It's a tough division. A heck of a lot of new pieces on both sides of the ball, but particularly the offense. Just about every skill position is a new player heading into this season. So I think that success, the amount of turnover, he makes perfect sense to me. If my predictions come true and they win 11 games, it makes perfect sense to give him the Coach of the Year award. And that's who I got taken home. Probably should have finished on MVP, because that it kind of is the big one. But there you have it. Those are my 2017 awards and I guess stat leader predictions. As always, let me know, what do you guys think? Give us a shout, whether it's comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page, find me on Twitter. Always happy to discuss football as ever. Thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this, check out some more of the show. We've got a preview up for every team in the NFL for the upcoming season. Some of them were done, about 6-7 weeks ago now, so they're a little bit, some of the info's a little out of date, but for the most part, 90% true. So they're well worth checking out. We've got our round table, me and a couple of friends talking about the current ongoing stuff in the NFL on a weekly basis. This week, we're going to be doing our preview for the upcoming Week 1 games, so that should be Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not entirely sure when it'll be up. I'm hoping to get it up tomorrow or Wednesday, because that way you can check it out before the kickoff on Thursday. So, as always, if you like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. It'd be thoroughly appreciated. Really am grateful to all of you that do check out the show. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great evening, and go Bucks.